Hello there, and welcome to Episode 4 of the Monday Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyos Ronan Beatmaker. And on this episode, we're going to be discussing attachments. As much as we value attachments, they can also be dangerous. We need to be mindful of the positive and the negative aspects of our attachments. Whether we are attached to a person, a material item, both types of attachments can, if you're not careful, lead to negative consequences. Take note of what this attachment means to you. I think that's something that we all kind of lose sight of. What does this attachment mean to me? What does it define in my evolution as a person? How does it relate or create my personality, aspect of my personality? Um, Webster's dictionary states attachment as to fasten, to adhere, and to bind by loyalty or ties of affection. And I say, ask yourself, is it healthy to bind or adhere to other people emotionally or physically, or even to a material item? We live in a world that values individuals and material things. And it's easy, way too easy to become attached. And we end up justifying our decisions, justifying certain choices in our life. Um, we may turn down opportunities. We may create problems and situations in our life that don't need to be there, all due to an attachment that we have. We all have been there. We've all made poor choices based on our attachments to a certain situation, a job, a person, an item, whatever it is. We've all made that poor choice. And some of us continue to do so. And that can be of some issue that you have not resolved in yourself, or this is what you are. That's who the type of person you're going to be, and there's no changing that. And I think that's another problem. We become attached to people in the hopes of trying to change them. And how many times does that work in our benefit? How many times do we get what we want, in a sense? How many times have we been able to change someone because we felt the more attached we are to them and their needs, the more they'll see that they need to change? And your reasonings could be selfish, or maybe you actually see the real potential in them. And so your attachment to them, you're attached to the person they could be, not to the person that they are. Um, and I think, ooh, dinner time. But I think that's the most difficult aspect and the most difficult thing when it comes to dealing with attachments, is that we feel so compelled by those attachments that we lose sight of the value, we lose sight of the toxicity, we lose sight of what's healthy for us, we lose sight of our goals, our dreams, we lose sight of our responsibilities. You know, it's no different than being a drug addict. That's an attachment. It's an unhealthy attachment. Um, and that attachment to that fix, to fading away, to escaping reality, that attachment is to validate your feelings, to make you feel safe. I mean, I can't speak from personal experience, but I can say that I've had someone in my life who was a drug addict. So when you, and for me personally, seeing, well, not even really seeing, hearing the stories of who they were before their drug addiction. And then, I was a young child, and seeing them who they are now as an adult, you really realize how negative that attachment is, how much of an impact that has. I mean, it's no, it's like your attachment to that person, it you how can you be attached to them, or how can you want them in your life? And like I said before, I think that really comes down to um wanting to fix them, being attached to the person they should be, not the person that is who they really are, what you're seeing, what you've continued to see, what you ignore, and what you hide away from seeing. Um, and that's you know, it's no different than if you're in an unhealthy relationship and you're attached to that person. You do whatever you can to keep them around, even if they are abusing you, you know, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally, because you've been attached to them because you feel that you are not who you're not represented without that person. Your identity is associated with that person. And I think that's also a problem with society and how we value individuals. Um, I'll use, for example, excuse me. I'll use, for example, the new Star Wars movie came out. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, it doesn't matter. But there's a character called Kylo Ren. And something happens to his character in the final act of the film. And people who were these, Kylo Ren fanatics, these Reylo fans, because they wanted Kylo Ren to be with the female lead, to fall in love with her. And something happens at the end of the film that, in many ways, um, it takes their headcanon, what they want to happen, and it pretty much kind of just takes it away from them. So these people then became so enraged and so mad that they actually started harassing the actor, threatening him and his family, and he had to increase security. So this attachment to a genocidal sociopathic character, they associate that with the actor, the real person. I've heard stories of people who have completely burned merchandise and all this due to what happens with this character because of their attachment to him. And that's such an unhealthy attachment, as I was saying. And look at the consequences. The consequences are this man has to increase his security because, and I'll put it in quotations, fans of Star Wars are harassing him about an imaginary character. And that's what I'm saying about attachments. See, they're attached to the version of this imaginary character in their mind, not to the reality of the situation, not to what the writers of the story have decided. And we do that on a daily basis. So all I'm trying to say is that attachments, if you are not self-aware of what you're attached to, it could destroy you. It could warp your perception of the world around you. And you end up gulping up all of the Kool-Aid and not even leaving a sip for anybody else. And I have, I'm responsible of being too attached to people or items. And for me myself, I learned lessons from them. Uh, but I also know that if I'm becoming too attached to something or someone, I'm self-aware, and you pump the brakes, you get some space. You start reevaluating your feelings as to why you're becoming so attached to this person. Is it because you really like them, or is there some underlying thing going on, some subconscious thing from the past that is now reacting in the future? Um, we're all human beings, and we all hurt. And sometimes, if we are hurt due to attachments, we can take that to another relationship. We can follow that through into another, material item that we get into, whatever it is, an imaginary character from, you know, a sci-fi fantasy series. Um, that's and I bring up, that Star Wars and that character because that's not even a real character. That's not a real person, but the attachments to it. I mean, look at, it's no different than, um, I forgot. There was some coffee company that was like, they were essentially standing up to bigotry in a sense, and people started destroying the coffee makers and burning them and lighting them on fires. They were even doing that with shoes, to protest. Oh, Colin Kaepernick, I think it was. Yeah, they were protesting Colin Kaepernick. So people started burning $500 Nike shoes and whatnot, and and like, you think to yourself, what the hell are you doing? That's money. You're burning items because of a football player, because of your team and what it represents and all that other, nonsense that comes with sports. I'm not trying to diss on sports, but this team camaraderie that, these that fans have, it's a bit extreme, and people have lost their lives due to being a fan of a different football team. I mean, it's no different than you look at European football or football in South America or in Africa. Um, these unhealthy attachments. That's all I'm trying to say, is that that's an unhealthy attachment. You're attached to a football team to the point that you will assault and potentially kill somebody. I don't know. That's a bit much. Um, these it's just attachments are crazy. It's just crazy to me why we feel such a need to become attached to things. And I mean, there are plenty of us out there who have been attached to things, knowing full well that it's unhealthy, but we need it. We can't help ourselves. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Um, but if you're not going to listen to your friends, if you're not going to listen to anybody around you who's going to help you, then then what's the point? You might as well just go all in. And I just think that attachments are just such a burden. And I'm sure if you were playing a drinking game right now, with the amount of times I've said attachments, everyone would be wasted right now. But I guess, the thing with attachments is that they represent validation, they represent comfort and safety, even if the item or the individual is toxic, dangerous, or hurtful or cruel. And that's literally what I was saying earlier. Like, we can't let go of our attachment, for we have become dependent on it. And like I was saying, without it, you feel lost. You feel like a part of your personality or your identity is gone. Your safety is gone. And it doesn't even matter what that person has done to you or what that item has cost to you in relationships and jobs or careers, whatever. We that's part of our identity. And I mean, like I was saying earlier with, the Star Wars character or football player or football fans. I mean, when that attachment to something that's you're not, none of these football fans, you're not making $20 million or doing all craziness like that. So this, or you're not living in that fantasy world. You're not one of the writers. So then these attachments become so part of our identity that we lose. We don't even, sometimes I feel like some people who are so attached to things, they don't even know who they really are anymore. Or maybe they never knew because they've used these attachments as an extension of who they think they are. And we've all seen that. We may have people like that in our lives right now. We may be experiencing that ourselves right now. And I say, if what I'm saying resonates with you, and you can hear my words, amongst the chatter of the attachments, I would say take a second and really reevaluate what's going on here in your life, why you're so attached to this. And if you think I'm, talking out my ass, well, that's your choice. I don't hold anything against you, but I appreciate you being here. Like I was saying, we need to examine our motives in our attachments. What is motivating our attachment to this? What does it represent? What does it give us emotionally, mentally, physically? You have to examine deep within and ask yourself, truly ask yourself, does this item or individual determine my happiness or define me as a person? That's something that you need to constantly ask yourself about. Things that you are too clingy to, things that you need that fix or whatever. If it defines you as a person, then you've lost sight of who you are. If it determines your happiness, then you can't make happiness yourself without that item. So then you'll never truly be happy. Never on your own. One thing that one of my biggest idols and influences is Musashi Miyamoto, a samurai. He wrote the book The Five Rings. And he talked about one thing that I try to live my life by in many ways is the art of walking alone. And I bring that up because if you're able to walk alone, free of attachments, you're able to walk a life free of control. And what I mean by free of control, you're free of control by outside sources. You have complete control of yourself. The art of walking alone doesn't mean that not to have friends, not to have relationships, to completely be like a hermit, to, block everyone out. No, but it means you need to free yourself from those attachments. You need to free yourself from those negative thoughts. You need to free yourself from resistance. And in many ways, resistance can come as a attachment, because it knows that by keeping you attached to this thing, you're not going to succeed in your other goals. You're not going to follow through with your responsibilities. You're not going to accomplish the task. So I say, ask yourself those questions, those two questions. Does this determine your happiness? And does it define you as a person? And if you can take the time and answer those questions, and this is not something that, happens overnight. You need to really take a time, take a weekend, take a walk, a long walk. This is going to take some reevaluating, and it may go, and you may not be ready for it because it may open up one more box, one more case, another one opens up, and you're starting to see a pattern in your attachments. And you may become frustrated. You may become disappointed with yourself. You may become surprised. You may become angry, but at least you're acknowledging it, and you're becoming self-aware to it, self-aware to your attachments. And that's what's key. And I just hope that whoever is listening to this, that some of this resonates with you and you take that time to reflect. And that wraps up this episode of the Monday Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyosaro Beatmaker. Please leave a comment with your thoughts below and hit that like button and make sure to hit that bell to be notified. Stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.